His fiancée invited his ex-wife to humiliate her on their engagement day. But what the maid's toddler exposed shocked everyone. The truth was in the house the whole time, hidden in plain sight. She smiled at him every morning. She folded his shirts. She poured his coffee. She whispered good night through a door she was never allowed to walk through. And he never once looked at her, not really. Not the way you look at someone when you're trying to see them. But she looked at him. Every single day. For 3 years she watched him love the wrong woman. The little girl knew first. 3 years old. Barely able to form sentences. But children don't learn to lie until adults teach them. And no one had taught her yet. What she said on that engagement day, in front of 37 guests, in the middle of a champagne toast, it didn't just break the moment. It broke the entire story everyone had been living inside. There was a fiancé. There was a maid. There was a child. There was an ex-wife who arrived uninvited. Or so everyone believed. By the end of this story, you'll question everything you thought you knew. Welcome back. If you're new here, stay close because this one moves fast and hides things in places you won't think to look. Today's story involves a billionaire, a broken marriage, a woman hired to clean his home, and a 3-year-old who wandered into a room where adults were performing a very careful, very expensive lie. Drop your theory in the comments as we go. I want to see who figures it out first. The clues are real. The misdirection is intentional. And at least one thing you'll believe in the first 10 minutes is completely wrong. New mysteries every week. Subscribe before the next one drops. Let's peel this back. Damien Ashworth was 33 years old and had the kind of life that looked extraordinary from every angle except the one you had to live inside. He owned 4 companies. He had a penthouse in the city and an estate outside it. 12 rooms, marble floors, a garden that a full-time groundskeeper maintained. He wore custom suits and attended charity galas and gave interviews in which he described himself as deeply grateful. He had the vocabulary of a man who had processed his pain and the eyes of a man who hadn't. His engagement to Camille Fontaine was announced on a Tuesday in March. By Wednesday it was in 3 lifestyle magazines. By Friday, her face was on the kind of websites that track the movements of beautiful, ambitious women with rich fiancés. Camille was 31. Blonde. Polished in the particular way that suggests money spent on appearing not to have spent money. She laughed at the right moments. She touched Damien's arm when other women looked at him. She had learned somewhere along the way to treat love like a performance. Not out of coldness but out of survival. That part, at least, was something Damien didn't understand yet. The engagement party was scheduled for April 15th. The estate. 37 guests. A string quartet. A caterer who charged more per hour than most people earned in a week. And on the staff roster for the evening, one maid hired through a domestic agency 8 months prior. Her name on the agency file read Elena Vasquez. She was 26 on that file. She was assigned to the kitchen and the ground floor hallway. She was not supposed to be seen. She had a daughter, 3 years old, named Lily. The agency had made an exception, a quiet, unofficial one, because Elena's childcare had fallen through the week she was hired, and the estate's housekeeper, Mrs. Okafor, had a soft heart and a spare room near the service quarters. Lily had lived in that room for 8 months. She knew the estate the way children know spaces, not by room names or square footage, but by feeling. She knew where the sunlight landed at noon. She knew which hallways echoed. She knew the sound of Damien's footsteps, because she had heard them above her ceiling 311 times. She had also, in the casual and devastatingly observant way of very small children, begun to call Damien by a name. Not the man upstairs. Not Mommy's boss. She called him Daddy. Mrs. Okafor had gently corrected her twice. Elena had gone very still both times and said nothing. The third time Lily said it, no one corrected her. They just looked at each other across the kitchen and let the words sit in the air between them like something that had been waiting to be spoken for a long time. Camille did not know about Lily. Camille had never been told about the child in the service quarters because Elena had asked Mrs. Okafor not to mention it, and Mrs. Okafor, who was loyal to the people who needed loyalty rather than the people who demanded it, had not. Damien knew about Lily. He had seen her twice in the hallway. Brief, accidental moments. He had smiled both times in the way men smile at children when they don't know what else to offer. He had not asked her name. He had not asked her age. He would later think about that. The not asking. The choosing not to know. Breadcrumb. Lily calls Damien daddy. Dismissed as childish confusion. It isn't. Red herring. Camille's secrecy about the party guest list seems like a controlling personality trait. It's actually strategy. Theory activation. Why would a maid's 3-year-old call a billionaire daddy? Is it innocent imitation? Or does this child know something? Sensory detail. The smell of champagne being poured, sweet, cold, and slightly wrong for the season. Dialogue. Meaning shifts after the twist 1 week before the party. Camille had found Damien standing at the window overlooking the garden. She'd come up behind him and asked, "What are you thinking about?" He had paused. Then, "Whether there are things in this house I don't know about." Camille had laughed. "It's your house, Damien." "Yes," he said. "That's what I mean." The invitation list for the engagement party was Camille's domain. She had been clear about that from the beginning, almost aggressively clear, in the way someone is clear about something they are afraid of being questioned on. Damien had not questioned it. He trusted her with the social architecture of their life together. It was, he would later admit, one of the ways he had learned to love people, by handing them responsibilities and calling it faith. He did not see the full guest list until 3 days before the party. He was in his study, reviewing quarterly reports, when his personal assistant, a careful man named Thomas who had worked for him for 6 years, set a printed copy of the evening's itinerary on his desk. Guest list attached. Damien's eyes moved down the names the way eyes do when they expect nothing. Casually, efficiently. 35 names. 36. 37. He stopped. He read the name again. Sophia Ashworth. His ex-wife. He sat very still for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and called Camille. "The guest list," he said when she answered. A half-second pause. "What about it?" "Sophia is on it." Another pause. Longer this time. "Yes. You invited my ex-wife to our engagement party." "I did." Camille's voice was composed. Not defensive but deliberate. She was choosing her words the way a chess player chooses moves. "She reached out to me, Damien. She wanted to offer her congratulations in person. I thought it would be mature. Forward-looking." Damien said nothing. "You're not still," Camille began. "No," he said. Quickly. Perhaps too quickly. "Good. Then it won't be a problem." He ended the call and sat with the name on the page for another 2 minutes. Sophia Ashworth. 30 years old. His ex-wife of 14 months. The marriage had lasted 4 years and ended in a silence so complete it had its own weight. Sophia had not reached out to him in 14 months. Not once. Not a message, not a letter. Nothing. The idea that she had reached out to Camille, to Damien's fiancée, struck him as so improbable that he sat with it until it began to feel like something else. Not impossible, but shaped wrong. Like a sentence where the grammar is technically correct, but the meaning has been assembled by someone who learned the language from a manual rather than lived in it. He went to Elena that afternoon, not deliberately, but because the hallway outside the kitchen was the route between his study and the garden, and Elena was in that hallway, carrying a basket of folded linens. She looked up when she heard him. He said, "Good afternoon." She said, "Good afternoon, Mr. Ashworth." Lily was not there. He noticed the absence without knowing why. He kept walking. But he turned back once, at the end of the hallway, and looked at the closed door to the service quarters. He stood there for exactly 4 seconds. Then he walked into the garden and stood in the cold April air and felt, for a reason he could not name, like a man who had been living in a house that was not entirely his own. Breadcrumb. Damien turns back to look at the service quarters door. Unconscious. Significant. Red herring. Sophia's appearance seems like Camille's calculated move to embarrass a romantic rival. The real purpose is entirely different. Theory activation. Why would Camille invite Sophia, the ex-wife, to their engagement party? Jealousy? Cruelty? Or is there something between Sophia and Camille that runs deeper than rivalry? Sensory detail. The folded linens in Elena's arms, white, pristine, pressed flat. Everything surfaces. Nothing revealed. Dialogue, meaning shifts after the twist later that evening. Lily wandered into the main hallway, something she was not supposed to do, and found Damien sitting on the bottom step of the staircase. He looked at her. She looked at him. "You're sad," she said. He almost smiled. "How do you know?" She pointed at his eyes. "Your face does the same thing as Mommy's face." He didn't ask what she meant. He should have. Sophia Ashworth drove to the estate on the morning of April 15th, 4 hours before the party, in a car she had borrowed from her sister because her own was in the shop. This detail matters because it means no one saw her arrive. There was no record of her car in the estate's security log. She came in through the garden entrance, the gate that the groundskeeper left unlocked between 7 and 11 a.m. She had known about that gate for 4 years. She was not there to congratulate anyone. She stood in the garden for a few minutes, very still, looking at the house. She was 30 years old. She had dark hair and the specific kind of beauty that doesn't try and is therefore twice as dangerous. She had left this marriage without a settlement, refused one actually. Walked away from a billionaire's divorce with nothing but her clothes and a document that proved she'd been here. People had called that stupid. She had not explained herself. She sat down on the garden bench, the one near the rose bushes, the one that had been there since before Damien bought the estate, and she opened her bag and took out an envelope. Inside the envelope were 2 things: a photograph and a document. She had been carrying them for 6 weeks. She had spent those 6 weeks deciding what to do. Every morning she woke up and thought about doing nothing. Most mornings that one. But on this morning, the morning of Damien's engagement party, something had shifted. She had gotten a call at 7 a.m. from a number she didn't recognize. The call lasted 12 seconds. No voice. Just the sound of a child singing very softly to herself. Then the line went dead. Sophia sat in the garden for 40 minutes. Then she put the envelope back in her bag and went inside through the kitchen entrance. Elena was in the kitchen. The 2 women looked at each other. Elena said in a voice so quiet it barely qualified a sound. "You came." Sophia said, "You made me come." They stood on opposite sides of the kitchen island, marble countertop between them, reflecting the morning light in a way that seemed somehow too beautiful for the conversation happening above it. "She's been calling him that again," Elena said. "I know. He doesn't know. He should." Elena looked down at her hands. "He has a fiancée." "He has a daughter," Sophia said. "That comes first." There was a silence. Then Lily walked in from the back room, still in her pajamas, holding a stuffed rabbit by one ear. She looked at Sophia with the open, uncomplicated attention of a child who has not yet learned to pretend. "Hi," Lily said. "Hi, sweetheart," Sophia said. "Do you know my daddy?" Sophia exhaled. Slowly, like someone setting down something heavy. "Yes," she said. "I know your daddy." Breadcrumb, Sophia says, "He has a daughter. That comes first." She knows the truth. She's known it for a while. Red herring. The phone call with the child singing sounds like a threat. It's actually a plea. Theory activation. Sophia knows Elena's daughter is Damien's child, but why has she been silent for weeks? And what's in that envelope? Sensory detail. Marble countertop, cold and reflective, between two women who know the same secret and have chosen different silences. Dialogue. Meaning shifts after the twist. Before Lily came in, Elena had said one more thing. Camille knows too. Sophia's face hadn't moved. I know she does. Then why is she going through with it? Sophia had looked at the door, the one Lily would walk through 30 seconds later, and said, because she thinks knowing is enough. She thinks knowing means she's safe. And she's not. No one who builds a life on top of someone else's secret is safe. Here is what everyone believed going into the party. Camille invited Sophia to humiliate Elena, to parade Damien's glamorous ex-wife in front of the housekeeper who had feelings for him. It was the kind of cruelty that wears the costume of social grace. It fit Camille's character as people had assembled it in their minds. Here is what was actually true. Camille did not invite Sophia to humiliate Elena. She invited Sophia to humiliate herself. 6 weeks before the engagement party, Camille had hired a private investigator. Not because she suspected Damien of infidelity, but because she suspected Elena. She had noticed things. Small things. The way Elena moved through the house as if she had known it before she was hired. The way she adjusted picture frames that had not been moved. The way she once, unconsciously, reached for a light switch in a room she had never been assigned to, and found it on the first try in the dark. The investigator had returned with a file. The file contained, among other things, a DNA test. Lily was Damien's biological daughter. Elena and Damien had not had an affair during the current period. The timeline was different. More complicated. More devastating. Elena and Damien had met 4 years ago, before the marriage to Sophia, at a period in his life he had told no one about. A period of collapse and chaos that had lasted 11 months and left no record except one. Daughter. Elena had never told him. She had taken the agency job because she had nowhere else to go. The man who had briefly been her world had married someone else and sealed that chapter, and she had been left with a child and a silence that had grown heavier every year. Camille had known all of this for 6 weeks. She had not confronted Damien. She had not confronted Elena. She had instead invited Sophia, because Sophia, Damien's ex-wife, would know immediately what the child represented. Because Sophia's presence at the party would force the question into the open. Because Camille, who was many things but was not, underneath it all, a person who wanted a marriage built on a buried child, had decided that if she couldn't dismantle this secret herself, she would create the conditions for it to dismantle itself. She was not trying to win. She was trying to end it cleanly. She had told herself that every night for 6 weeks. Some nights she believed it. Breadcrumb, Camille's PI file, referenced obliquely as the folder on her desk. It's been visible in every scene set in her room. Red herring. Everything about Camille reads as manipulation. Her actual motive is almost the opposite. She's engineering truth, not deception. Theory activation. Camille knows about Lily. Sophia knows about Lily. Elena knows Damien is Lily's father. The only person in the estate who doesn't know the full picture is Damien himself. Why has everyone protected him from this? Sensory detail. The string quartet beginning to tune their instruments. Separate notes, not yet music, not yet anything that holds together. Dialogue. Meaning shifts after the twist 3 weeks before the party. Camille had sat across from her own reflection in the bathroom mirror and said out loud to no one, "He has the right to know her." She had not been talking about Elena. She had been talking about Lily. She had not recognized that yet. The party began at 7 p.m. By 7:45, the champagne was circulating, the quartet was playing Vivaldi, and 37 people were engaged in the careful performance of enjoying themselves in a beautiful space. Damien moved through his guests the way he moved through everything, With focus, with courtesy, with a faint impression that part of him was elsewhere. He shook hands. He received congratulations. He laughed at the right moments. He was watching the door. Sophia arrived at E3. He saw her before she saw him. She was wearing dark blue. Quiet, deliberate, the choice of someone who doesn't want to be looked at but accepts that they will be. She held her bag with both hands in front of her body like a woman carrying something fragile. Their eyes met across the room. She looked like someone who had been practicing what to say and had decided, at the last moment, to say something different. He excused himself from a conversation about offshore investments and moved toward her. He told himself he was simply being polite. He had been telling himself comfortable things for 4 years. He was very practiced at it. Sophia. Damien. A pause in which neither of them performed anything. Did Camille? He started. I came on my own, Sophia said. Camille opened the door. I walked through it. He studied her. Why? She opened her mouth, closed it, looked past him toward the far hallway, the one that led to the service quarters. Her eyes moved there and back. He turned to follow her gaze. The hallway was empty, but he felt it. The specific gravitational pull of something he had been not thinking about for 8 months. The door he had stood outside of for 4 seconds in the cold and then walked away from. There's something in this house, he said slowly. Not a question. Sophia said nothing. Something I don't know about, he continued. Something you haven't let yourself know about, she said. Those aren't the same thing. He was about to respond when Camille appeared at his elbow. Flawlessly timed porcelain smile, one hand on his arm with the exact right amount of pressure. Sophia, she said warmly. I'm so glad you came. The three of them stood in a triangle. Vivaldi played. Ice clinked in glasses. And in the service quarters down the hallway, a 3-year-old in a white dress, because Mrs. Okafor had dressed her nicely in case she was seen, woke up from her nap, slid off her small bed, took her stuffed rabbit by the ear and opened the door. Damien had already begun moving back toward his guests when he heard the small footsteps on the marble floor. He turned. Lily stood in the hallway entrance. White dress, dark curls, eyes that were, unmistakably, with the specific geometry of bone structure and the particular darkness of their brown. His own eyes. He had not let himself notice it before. He noticed it now. The way you notice a thing when the moment finally removes your permission not to. Breadcrumb, Lily's eyes, described 3 times in the story as brown, very dark, specific. This is the moment they land. Red herring. Sophia's gaze toward the hallway reads as nostalgia for the estate. It's actually a signal. Theory activation. Damien is beginning to see. What happens in the next 60 seconds will determine whether he runs toward the truth or away from it, and which choice is the one he's always made. Sensory detail. White dress against dark marble hallway, the child appearing like something that refuses to stay in the room it was placed in. Dialogue, meaning shifts after the twist Sophia had said, those aren't the same thing. Meaning, not knowing and choosing not to know. The line lands differently now. Because Damien has been doing the second one for 8 months. Maybe longer. What happened next lasted 90 seconds. Later, every person in that room would remember it differently. The way people always reconstruct the moments that rearrange them. Lily walked into the party. She walked with the absolute confidence of a 3-year-old who has not yet developed spatial anxiety. Which is to say, she walked directly toward the largest group of people, because that was where the lights were brightest and the sounds most interesting. The guests parted slightly. Someone said, "Oh, how sweet." Someone else made a sound that might have been a laugh. Elena appeared at the hallway entrance a half-second later. She had heard the door, heard the footsteps, and understood immediately with the precision of a mother what was happening. Her face was very still. She started to move forward. Camille saw her, made eye contact, gave the smallest, almost imperceptible shake of her head. Elena stopped. This exchange, 3 seconds silent across a room full of people, was the moment the script broke down. Because Camille shaking her head did not mean stop her. It meant something closer to let it happen. Let the thing that needs to happen, happen. Lily had reached Damien. She stood in front of him, looked up at the very tall man whose eyes were her eyes, and said, with complete composure, in the clear, carrying voice of a child who has no idea what a room full of adults has decided to make complicated. "Daddy!" The word landed in the room like a stone in water. The circles moved outward. 37 people processed it at different speeds. Some with confusion, some with immediate understanding, some with the specifically uncomfortable recognition of having witnessed something real in a context designed for performance. Damien looked down at her. He did not laugh it off. He did not look away. He crouched down, all the way down to her level, and he looked at her face for the first time without the permission structure of not knowing insulating him. "What's your name?" he said, quietly. "Lily," she said. "How old are you, Lily?" She held up 3 fingers. He did the arithmetic with his eyes. The math arrived before any thought did. It arrived in his body first, the way truth always does when you've been holding it at a distance for so long that when it finally reaches you, it doesn't knock. Collapses. He looked up. Not at Camille. Not at Sophia. Helena. She was standing at the edge of the room, her hands at her sides, and she was looking at him with the expression of someone who has been waiting a very long time for a conversation and is no longer afraid of it. He stood up slowly. And then Sophia, who had been standing 6 feet away and watching all of this, said the thing she had come here to say. The thing in the envelope, the second piece, the document she had been carrying for 6 weeks. "Damien. The DNA results. I had them run independently 3 months ago. It is yours. I've known." I didn't say anything because I was waiting to understand why Elena hadn't. And then I understood. She was protecting the child from a man who might not want her. She needed to know you were ready. I think, she paused. I think tonight she found out. The secondary reveal, the deepest structural one, was not Lily. It was Sophia. Sophia Ashworth, Damien's ex-wife, who had walked away from the marriage without a settlement, without explanation, without a word. She had left because she had found Elena's letters. Not love letters. Something older, records, in a box in the estate's storage room, from before the marriage. A woman's name. A pregnancy note, unfinished, never sent. She had not understood what they meant until later. When she did understand, she had made a choice. Not to use the knowledge as a weapon. To leave. Wait. To protect, at a distance, a child who had nothing to do with the marriage's failure. She had left because she was, under everything, a decent person who had been placed in an indecent situation and had refused to let it make her indecent in return. Breadcrumb. Sophia refused the divorce settlement. Now you know why. Red herring. The unopened envelope in Sophia's bag read as legal action. It was evidence, brought not to destroy but to release. Theory activation. Sophia, Elena, and Camille each knew. 3 women, 1 secret, 3 different reasons for their silence. But whose silence hurt the most? And whose was actually an act of love? Sensory detail. Lily's 3 raised fingers. Small, certain, irrefutable. Dialogue. Meaning shifts after the twist back in layer 1, Camille had said, "It's your house, Damien." He had said, "That's what I mean." He had not meant the rooms or the marble or the 12 bedrooms. He had meant, there is something here that belongs to me that I haven't claimed yet. He had known, in the place below language, before he was ready to know anywhere else. Damien Ashworth stood in the center of his engagement party with 37 people watching, and looked at the 3-year-old girl in the white dress who was his daughter. Then he looked at Elena. He crossed the room. Not quickly. Not with the energy of performance or crisis. Slowly, the way you move when you have finished running from something and have turned to face it. He stopped in front of her. Close enough that the rest of the room ceased to be the most important geography. "How long?" he said. 3 years, Elena said. "And 7 months. Why didn't you?" "Because you were married." Her voice didn't waver. "And then you were engaged. And I thought if I came as staff, if I was here, I needed her to know the house. To know where she came from. Even if she never knew you. I didn't plan for her to walk into the party." "Mrs. Okafor dressed her nicely," he said. Irrelevant, and also the most human thing he had said all evening. "Yes. She was hoping," he said, "that she'd be seen." Elena looked at the ground. Then back at him. "Yes." Behind them, the room had reorganized itself into the quiet, collective stillness of people who know they are watching a private moment and cannot look away. The string quartet had stopped playing. No one had told them to. They had simply understood. Camille was standing near the window. She was watching Damien with an expression that was not grief. Not exactly. It was something closer to relief. The specific relief of a person who has been holding a structure together with effort and has finally, gratefully, set it down. She had not been in love with Damien in the way the engagement had suggested. She had been in love with the idea of solving him, of being the woman who organized his chaos, completed his surface, made the architecture of his life look intentional. She was good at that. It was a skill. It was not, she understood now, the same as a marriage. She had known about Lily and stayed. Not because she was cruel. Because she was afraid that leaving would confirm something she didn't want confirmed. That she was not someone people stayed for. The PI file had given her a gift she hadn't recognized as one. It had handed her a reason to engineer an exit that didn't look like abandonment. It had let her be the architect of truth rather than the casualty of it. Now she watched Damien crouch down again, the second time in 10 minutes, and speak to Lily at her level. "Hi, Lily," he said. "Hi," she said. Then, "You were sad before." "I was. Are you still sad?" He looked at her for a long moment. "No," he said. "I don't think so." Lily considered this with the gravity of someone for whom feelings are recent phenomena still being catalogued. "Okay," she said. And then she held out her stuffed rabbit by the ear, offering it to him. The clearest, most uncomplicated gesture of trust available to a 3-year-old, and he took it with both hands. The full truth, when it assembled itself completely, was this. Elena had come to work in the estate not to seduce or manipulate or claim. She had come because her daughter deserved to know the geography of her own origin. Because Elena had run out of explanations for why a little girl had certain eyes, and she had none of her own to point to. Sophia had left a marriage not out of failure but out of integrity. She had walked away from a settlement because taking money felt like making the secret official. She had spent 14 months building evidence, not for court, but for a conversation. Camille had stayed in an engagement because she confused solving for loving, and she had ended it by refusing to let a child be invisible any longer. And Damien had stood in the hallway outside a door for 4 seconds 8 months ago and walked away. Had not asked a child her name. Had not looked too closely at dark brown eyes. Had chosen for the 8th time, for the 100th time, the comfort of a life whose contents he had agreed not to examine. The difference now was that Lily had walked through the door herself. You cannot protect a 3-year-old from the need to belong to someone. It is older than language. Older than wealth. Older than every careful arrangement adults build to keep difficult things at a safe and manageable distance. The morning after the party, Damien dissolved the engagement. Mutually, quietly, with a respect for Camille that was made possible by the fact that she had done something for him he had not asked for and could not have done himself. He called his lawyer. He called a family specialist. He called Elena, not with urgency, but with the tone of someone beginning a conversation they intend to have correctly this time. Sophia drove home in her borrowed car. She placed the envelope on the passenger seat. She didn't need it anymore. Lily woke up in her room in the service quarters and ate toast with a rabbit beside her plate and told Mrs. Okafor, with complete satisfaction, "I saw Daddy." Mrs. Okafor said, "Yes, sweetheart. You did." Breadcrumb fully resolved. Lily calling him Daddy was never confusion. It was knowledge. Children know their fathers in the blood. She had always known. Red herring fully resolved. Sophia's presence was never about humiliating Elena. Camille's invitation was never about cruelty. The entire architecture of rivalry was built to misdirect you from the real story. Three women making imperfect, human, largely loving choices around a secret that deserved daylight. Final sensory detail. Toast and a stuffed rabbit. The morning after everything. The most ordinary and therefore the most extraordinary image in the story. Final dialogue resolution. Go back to layer 1. Read Damien's line at the window. Whether there are things in this house I don't know about. He knew. He had always known something. He just needed someone small enough to not know how to lie yet. And that is the complete truth of it. No villain. No hero dressed in armor. Just a man who had learned to live in his own house as a stranger, a woman who carried a secret the length of a childhood, a child who walked through a door because that is what children do, and two women who each, in their own way, decided that truth was worth more than the silence protecting it. Go back to layer 1. Read that first line again. The truth was in the house the whole time. Hidden in plain sight. It wasn't the engagement. It wasn't the ex-wife. It wasn't even the maid. It was a 3-year-old in a white dress holding a stuffed rabbit, who had not yet been taught that some doors are supposed to stay closed. She opened it anyway. Did you figure it out? Or did the story fool you completely? Drop your theory in the comments. At what point did you first suspect? Did you think Camille was the villain? Did Sophia surprise you? When did you know about Lily? I read every single comment. The most interesting theory gets pinned. If this story made you pause, rewind, or feel something, hit the like button. Takes 1 second and it means everything to this channel. Subscribe because the next story has a twist so deep that the reveal happens in 2 stages, and the second stage undoes the first entirely. You do not want to come in halfway through. The next one drops soon. Be here.